Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. We were just going to review last week's food for thought homework. So what fears did you guys notice coming up over and over again for you?
For me, it was Dawson, Karen, my mother-in-law, gaining weight, a claim that we are battling with for insurance, health insurance.
Oh, that's always fun.
Yeah. Those were the biggies, I think.
How often did you notice those same ones coming up over and over?
I don't think I kept very good track of that, like
Okay.
how often they were.
Okay. But those were the reoccurring ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you able to get down to the root of any of those fears?
No, I didn't do that this week. I wasn't sure how far we were going.
Okay.
I did do some another session of authentic journaling, and it was horrible.
Really?
Which I think is a good thing. Like, if it's hard, it's gonna work.
So tell me, so Julie, just to update you, authentic journaling is a technique that I actually will do another lesson on later in this program, but she was in my program, my empowerment mentoring program, and learned how to do that then. And basically it's a way of journaling where you write down the inspiration that you get, right? So when you're thinking through something, you're praying for help or whatever, you write down what comes to you. So tell us what was hard about it, Mitzi.
Well, that's it. I didn't feel like I was getting anything. So I just sat there and I'm like, Heavenly Father, I'm here. I'm listening. Are you there? And then it just turned into like, why aren't you answering? That whole like self-pity, bawling my eyes out. I never get anything. You're not listening to me.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
And I often do feel that way. I don't know. I know I have the gift of faith. It's in my patriarchal blessing. And so sometimes I feel like he just is, letting me go with that gift, and I have faith because I know he lives, and I know everything. So I think sometimes he just is like, well, I know you're going to be fine because you have faith. And so I oftentimes feel like I don't get a whole lot, or maybe I just don't recognize I'm getting it, and I am.
Oh, that's interesting. Have you heard Michael McLean's speech on his faith crisis?
Mm-mm.
See if you can look that up. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it will be out there somewhere. He spoke at Time Out for Women. I'm just going to hurry and throw it in there and see if it pops up. Okay, there is some stuff in here, and LDS Living has an article about it, and then there are some videos.
Okay.
So he went through a 9-year period where he was getting nothing back.
Really?
Yeah, 9 years, and talked about, here he is, this very famous, member of the Church of Jesus Christ, and he's supposed to be carrying this torch, and he said he really felt absolutely nothing for 10 years. Yeah. So, but he talks about the great blessing that turned out to be, and what was really going on, and how he was receiving some stuff but didn't even recognize it until later, and all sorts of stuff. But that might be a really helpful thing for you to look at.
Yeah.
But don't stress about it. It's a learning experience, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to use that curiosity, that fifth guideline of, okay, what are all the reasons maybe I didn't feel anything? Good and bad, right? Just list them all. What are all the ones that could possibly be? And then go through and say, okay, which ones of these are likely true? Which ones are probably false? Which ones can I control? Which ones can't I? What am I going to do next?
Okay.
But one step at a time. Well, okay, so I've written down your list of Dawson, Karen, your weight, and this insurance claim. Sounds so familiar to me, even though the names are different, right?
Yeah.
So Julie, how was your experience with looking at your fears this week?
Um, Good. I mean, I didn't write down things as often, but I do kind of recognize where the fears, what the fears are, because they're pretty consistent.
Okay. Do you want to share
Um,
them? You don't have to.
what's that?
You want to share them? You don't have to.
Oh, I'm fine to share them. Um, the big thing that always comes up for me is not being able to do it all. I had such an interesting week with that too. I don't think I shared this last week. I think this happened since we talked, but yeah, so that's like a big one. Like there's always too much to do, not being able to do it all. Um, Fears around my business, well, both of them. Fears around my marriage. Um, and then this didn't come up too much, but yeah, fears around my kids too, different issues with different kids. But yeah.
Wow, we all sound like women.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we all have very, very similar fears, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, mine are very, very, very similar. Our, fears about my kids, fear about my husband, fear about our finances, fear, now I'm leading this group. What if I can't do it? What if I, don't lose the rest of the weight? What if, all that stuff comes up. So.
And then the thing about not being able to lose weight is a big one for me right now, because that was kind of my goal for the year, was I was going to finally get on top of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually been working on it for more than a year. I mean, I've been working on it for a long, long time, but like spending money on programs and things for a year and a half, trying to find an answer, kind of not doing like meal replacement stuff, but like trying to find the emotional answer, the inner answer, not the like, what do I eat?
Not the quick fix.
I spend too much time in confusion there. But like, what was so interesting about not being able to do it all this week was that I literally couldn't do it all this week. And on time, it was the craziest thing, because I had all 8 grandkids at my house, and I had this big event at my business on Friday, and I'm babysitting my grandkids all this week. All this stuff was going on, and I had already determined that there was not enough people that could go with us to church and actually manage that many kids under the age of 4. So I already determined I just wasn't going to go to church this week. And so my husband was out of town, so he wasn't here to help, and there just weren't enough hands. And then during the week, I got a message to play the organ for church, and then I got a message asking me if I would speak in church, and then I got a message that there was a primary program. I'm in the state primary presidency. There was this primary program in another ward, and I'm like, nope, can't do it. It was wild. I haven't been asked to speak in 3 years, and it's like it came up this week.
Right
1 week.
Well, I'm proud of you for being able to say no. A lot of people feel like they can't say no, and so they say yes to everything until they have a breakdown, right?
So it made me wonder how often I should be saying yes when I'm, how much more often I should be saying no. And right. I've got my husband and my sister telling me, you need to ask to be released from your calling. I'm like, in 30 years, I've only had leadership callings, and this is the easiest leadership calling I've had. So why would I do that? Anyway, right. Sorry, that's a whole nother issue.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, though, because I think that's probably something that's what you said, not about what your husband and your sister said, but what about you thought in your mind. You're starting to wonder, should I be saying no more often? That's something I would go after, that thought. Yeah. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying that's a thought you may want to sit down and journal about, pray about, and say, is this something you're trying to tell me? Right? And if so, then it's between you and God what goes. Right? It may be several things. It may be, sometimes it's easy for the people we love to tell us that something else should go away.
Right.
But in reality, maybe they're the person we have to say no to when they want our help on something, you know?
Well, yeah, and that's what I had to do. Yeah, that's what I had to do with my husband this year, was I had to just say, look, because, I agreed to run this business, the chiropractic business, so he could continue working. And I agreed to do that 3 years ago, expecting it to be like 3 years at the max. And now, and then he was talking about maybe coming on board in 6 months, but wanting me to continue. And I just was like, it's just not going to work for me.
Yeah.
I've done my time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's interesting. There's a lot of lessons that can come out of your situation right now. And I mean, I can think of possible lessons, but I can't tell you what the actual lessons should be because I'm not in your situation. But I know in my own past, I've had to learn lessons of how to say no. I've had to learn lessons on, there's things I have no choice. I have to do, but I cannot do it. And that's when the Lord's been trying to tell me, yeah, but I can. So turn them over to me and stop trying to do them all yourself. And I've seen some miraculous things happen when I just have been able to let go of some things. So there's all sorts of possible lessons in there if we use that fifth step of being curious.
Right.
Rather than beating yourself up at, look, I couldn't get all this done and I'm such a loser and I should be able to do the X, Y, and Z. And, if Mitzi's looking at her journaling experience and say, oh, well, this is supposed to be so life-changing and I can't even write a single thing down, what's wrong with me? Then she's going to miss the lesson that's through, right? It really doesn't matter what the result is that you got. What matters is that you learned the lesson that was there to be learned.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
Right. And so that's the important thing, is that we take out that negativity, the shame, the judging, and just get really curious about, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? And that's much easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I would encourage you to think about some of these common fears, right? So Mitzi's talked about her son, her mother-in-law, her weight, an insurance claim. And Julie talked about having way too much to do and fears around, her business, her marriage, her kids, pretty typical things. And start thinking about, what would happen if that happened, right? Okay, so what if the kids make choices, the one choice we're afraid they're going to make, whatever that biggest fear is, what would happen? What will we learn from that? What's true, what's not? Start taking the fear a little bit further and examine, okay, what would happen if you say no to this person that wants you to do something? What would happen if you didn't finish losing all your weight by the end of the year? What if, and start asking those questions and see what answers come to you, right? See what answers seem true and bring you peace. And don't let the fears themselves, the fears tell you, well, if that happens, that's the worst possible thing that could happen. Well, is it? I mean, if you don't lose all your weight by January 1st and you've set all this time and you've set a goal, you're going to have it done by then, and it doesn't happen, would that be okay? Would your life end? Or what if you were 3 months closer to having a comfortable relationship with food? What if you find you weren't overeating so much? What if you found you weren't thinking about food all the time? What if you found you had maintained for a few months for the first time in your life without having to diet and binge, right? Or what if you made it through the entire holidays and felt satisfied with just, a much smaller amount of your favorite foods and didn't feel controlled by them? Would that be good? Or what if it takes you a year to practice this before the weight starts to come down? What would happen? Right?
That would be awful.
What?
So that would be awful.
Okay, it feels like it would be awful, right? And that's what stops us from doing the things that actually work, right? That fear of like, I can't live like this another day, so I'm going to take the appetite suppressants that are in my cupboard right now, or I'm going to start jogging every single day, even though, I did that when I was 100 and plus pounds overweight, and ended up destroying some of the bones in my feet because I was so determined that I just have to do this and I have to do it right now, no matter how much it costs, and no matter, I'm going to be so determined, instead of listening to my body and doing it the slow and permanent way. But you have to really think, would it be the worst thing in the world if it took a year? See, I first ran across these principles 20 years ago, but because I was terrified that it might take me a year or two to learn it and get good at it and lose the weight, I was too afraid to do it. So instead, I waited. Oh, Julie says her computer decided to restart. She'll be back on in a second.
No.
It's okay. We'll keep going. But instead, I spent 30 years chasing the quick fix. That didn't even work. So even though you could say that took me 30 years, it didn't even take me 30 years because it didn't work. It took me forever. So we can say, okay, well, I'll dedicate a year of my life to really doing this the right way, or however long it takes, as opposed to, no, I got to do it right now. And we forget that right now promise doesn't even work.
Right.
That's the biggest problem.
Right now I have this fear, along with gaining weight. I'm pretty sure I've started menopause, and I'm only 44.
Fun.
So I am so scared because I've heard everyone say you just gain weight, you can't lose weight, especially when you start menopause because of your hormones and all that. So I'm just scared to death and I keep gaining and gaining slowly and slowly and slowly, and I just.
Well, okay, let's look at that realistically.
Yeah.
Most people who are saying that are people who are in menopause who are struggling with their weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though, your hormones do have a play in what you do and how your body works, it can't undo math. It can't undo the fact that when we eat X amount of calories and your body burns X amount of calories, there's X result, right? Now, it may be true that a lot of people at that time choose to be more sedentary. A lot of times we, I don't know, there's a lot of things that go into it. So don't let what the world tells you. I mean, the world is also telling you that the only way to lose weight is to go gluten-free and sugar-free and go, hire a personal trainer and work your guts out for an hour a day.
Right.
So we have to be really careful that we rely on, and this is why I created this program. We have to rely on, what did God create? What did God say? How did God make my body? Because I'm sure that in olden days, you didn't see all the women over 50 as huge women either. Right? They were just eating when they were hungry, fixing the food, stopping it enough. They had a lot of physical labor they had to do.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that different. They may have been a little soft around the middle, maybe, or something. I don't know. But the point is, the world tells us a lot of stuff that's not true. And it also tells us a lot of stuff to get us to buy their programs or to, buy into whatever it is they're telling us. But just think common sense. Okay, how did God make my body? How did it work? Now, I have a good friend. I tell stories about her all the time because we actually met each other in an eating disorder group. Her name is Cindy. She's now an incredible marriage family therapist. And she overcame bulimia, anorexia, years and years of it, really bad.
Wow.
She is now completely 100% mentally, physically healthy. And she had learned that at menopause, that typically your body needed about 10 more pounds of fat in order to be able to process whatever it needs to do when you're older. And she learned to become okay with that. And she says, I'm about 10 pounds more than I was when I was younger. And it's just not, 10 pounds is not a big deal. But the world wants to tell you, oh, you gain all this weight and you do all this crazy stuff. Well, that's usually said to you by people who gained a lot of weight and want to find a great reason to justify that,
Yeah.
But I don't think, from my experience with people that have a healthy relationship with food, I haven't seen that to be true. And I've been in menopause now by force for over a decade.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, I had a hysterectomy and that was menopause overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I haven't found that to be true. I've lost weight since then. So, Right. So, okay, so let's go back to this. So our fears, right? Learning to kind of recognize what the base of those fears are. I would encourage you to keep working on that. I mean, we could spend weeks on just that one topic because the fears are such at the root of what we're doing. And if either of you have had a chance to start on the ebook, that will give you a really definite step-by-step way of looking at each one of those fears. So have either one of you read it yet?
I read the first chapter.
That's
Yeah,
good.
me too.
That's good. When you get to the steps, I would suggest you just take whatever your biggest fear is at the moment and just take it through those steps. Just
Okay.
take one of the fears and say, okay, here's my biggest fear on X, and just go through the 5 steps and see how you feel by the time you're at the end of it.
Okay.
That would probably be that's what works best for me. Okay, now let's talk for a minute about being hungry.
I think you were right the first time.
Yeah, it's tell me your general thoughts about this basic guideline. Just paying attention when you're hungry and when you're full. Be honest. What are your thoughts on it?
It's good. I I the last couple of weeks I've tried a couple of different times to kind of write down what I'm going to eat the next day, plan ahead so that it's not emotional. It's just, this is what I'm going to eat. And I haven't done very well. And
How far in advance did you decide what you were going to eat?
The night before. And so, like, for example, yesterday, and then I always make the excuse that it's just because I'm so busy, I'm so stressed, there's no way that I can focus on this, my willpower is depleted, blah, 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 blah. Just always lots of excuses. So but yesterday, I started again. And like I said, we've got the 8 kids at the house, and I took 4 of them back over to their house for a little while so they could nap there. And, it was just back and forth, and kids begging for stuff all day long and all that kind of thing. And I'm a little too old for this, but anyway, and by 5:30, I was just starving. And instead of waiting to eat what I had set aside, because I could have just pulled it out right then and just eaten it, but my daughter was fixing dinner for the kids, and I thought, well, I can't right now. So I pulled out crackers, and then I ate all night long. I just ate crap all night long. I ate dinner with everybody else. I didn't eat what I planned. But I woke up this morning and I thought, I just looked at yesterday and I said, okay, I could decide to, because my thoughts after that was, this just isn't going to work. I've got to wait another week. I've got to wait. There will come a better time. And I'm like, there's never going to come a better time. So this morning, instead of deciding that I was just going to quit and that I wasn't going to make, that I couldn't make it work and all that, I decided rather than quitting, that I was going to stick with it. And I looked at my day yesterday, and I realized there were some things that I could change, and it has a lot to do with this hunger thing, because my breakfast is filling. And then I ate lunch a little earlier than I would have normally, because that's when the kids were eating. And so but then there was this huge stretch between lunch and dinner. So I just decided that what I'm going to do is eat lunch later and then eat dinner later. And I'm actually going to wait till I get the kids to bed to eat dinner.
What if you're starving before then?
I'll be fine, because I'm going to eat a late lunch.
Okay, so here's some thoughts on that you may find helpful. One of the things that I really despised about dieting was that it gave you all these guidelines intended to help you control yourself. But when the time actually came, I didn't find them to be realistic. So for instance, I would plan my meals out for a whole week, and I'd say, okay, on Monday we're going to eat this, and Tuesday we're going to eat this, and I'd go shopping and have the food prepared. Well, what happens when Tuesday night comes and that dinner just sounds awful? You're just not in the mood. And it doesn't sound good to you anymore, right?
You eat it anyway because you're keeping integrity with yourself.
Well, but that's interesting because we tell ourselves that, but then we get zero satisfaction out of it. And what do we end up doing?
Binging later.
We keep eating, trying to satisfy whatever it is we really wanted. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we have this guideline that says, eat what your body wants. If you want spaghetti, go make spaghetti. But if you plan spaghetti, what really sounds good to you is just a stupid plain peanut butter and jelly sandwich, then scrap the spaghetti for another day, put the meat in the freezer, spaghetti will last, and go make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right?
I guess my struggle is that the only thing that ever sounds good to me is sugar.
Okay.
Sugar.
But until you allow yourself to eat what sounds good to you when it sounds good to you, and you learn to trust yourself, that's going to change. I promise. I cross my heart. I hope to die. If you read like the intuitive eating books or Janine Roth's books, all of those, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of people that have done this, and I've experienced it myself, or I would not be able to say this. If you're constantly saying, well, I can't have that. I've had too much of that. I can't have that. Then it's always the thing you want. It's always your brain. So I just spent 5 days with my little grandbaby, and she only wants what you tell her she can't have, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as you say, no, that's grandma's phone. You can't have that. All she wants is grandma's phone, and she knows you stuck it behind your back, so she's got to get behind your back, and then you put it under your leg, and then it's like she's obsessed with it. As soon as I threw it out and gave it to her, that's all she wanted, played with it, and guess what? After a little while, not so much fun anymore. And it went aside, and now something else is fun, right? But as long as I was saying you can't have it, that's all she wanted. And every time, diets have done that to us for decades. Made sugar and desserts to be these big no things. Well, the truth is we've all eaten sugar to the point where we thought we were going to vomit, right? Usually I've done it all at once, right? In an evening or whatever. But at some point your body goes, it really doesn't sound good to me. So I forget, Julie, have you ever read Janine Roth's books?
No.
Okay. There's a great book. Now part of my problem with Janine Roth is that she uses a lot of language I'm not comfortable with. Pretty strong language, okay? So you may or may not want to get this book. But she has a book called Breaking Free from Emotional Eating. And in it, she shares this story about herself and when she stopped. And she was both extremes. She put on 80 pounds. She was 80 pounds underweight. She was like huge extremes. So she understands both sides of the issue. And she said when she finally decided, I'm never binging again and I'm never dieting again. I'm going to eat exactly what I want. I'm going to listen to my body. For 2 whole weeks, she ate nothing but cookies and cookie dough. That's it. Literally. 3 meals a day or 5 or however many she was hungry. She ate nothing but cookies and cookie dough. And she said she was just going to trust her body. And so she goes into great detail. She's a fun writer. So she goes into great detail about, she wanted 1 ball of cookie dough and 2 baked cookies for breakfast. And so that's what she had. And she enjoyed every single bite. And she was not sick of it in any way, shape, or form. So then lunchtime came and she had, 3 cookie balls and, different kind of cookie, whatever. But she just ate chocolate chip cookies for 2 weeks. And she said, people were making fun of her. Her roommate was like, you're going to get so sick. She's like, I don't care. I love this. It took her 2 weeks of doing that before she started to go, I just really don't want another cookie dough ball. I just want a sandwich, like it's just something else finally sounded good to her. And then she said she started realizing that she actually wanted a vegetable, and she hadn't wanted a vegetable in 20, 30 years, but that's kind of the way it works, is that you have to give yourself permission to say, if this is what I really want, this is what I'm going to have. And now she said she initially put on about, in fact, I think I quoted her in here, or maybe it's in next week's lesson. I'll find it. She talks about how when she first started this, she initially put on a few pounds. I don't remember how many it was. It might be like 10, 12, something like that total. And then she leveled off, and then she started losing. And then in the end, she lost over 80 some odd pounds, in a year. But first she did go up a teeny bit because she had to give herself permission to eat what sounded good. She didn't give herself permission to eat as much as she wanted without paying attention to hunger and fullness. She forced herself to stop when she'd had enough and gave herself permission to keep going when she was hungry. Because if you don't give yourself permission to eat it again when you're hungry, then you can't stop, right? If you think this is limited right now, there's no way to get yourself to stop, because it just feels like, I'm just not going to get this again. Perfect example, speaking of chocolate chip cookies, my daughter is like the chocolate chip cookie queen. Like, seriously, she sold them for money. She's amazing. And last night when we were at her house getting ready to go to the airport, she made chocolate chip cookies for dessert. And I said, okay, I'm going to have 2. And I did, and they were fantastic. And then she pulled another thing out of the oven. And she was like, oh, but you're going to be hungry on the plane and blah, blah, blah. And I let myself eat 1 more. And I thought to myself later, not that that was a big horrible crime or anything, but I thought I didn't even really enjoy the 3rd one because my body had enough. And so it was more like my brain going, but I won't get it later. And I thought, why didn't I throw it in a baggie and take it with me to have today? Right? Why didn't I do that? But at some point, it's like, we don't want to miss out. And the minute we don't want to miss out, or we think it's going to be gone, I won't get it again, that's all we want. I just want another one. So I've just been lecturing you for 5 minutes, Julie. You still there? Did you sign up? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I guess you noticed I sent you a message and said my computer.
I did.
Restarted. Okay. I was like, I don't know if they noticed I was gone for a while.
I did. We kept going for the recording's sake so that you could catch up on it later.
Okay.
But really, I want you to figure out, and it's so scary to do this. You see, there's not a ton of us on this call, right? It's because this is a scary concept for people. They want guaranteed quick weight loss, and that's all we care about, because our self-worth is so tied to our weight. And it really takes a strong person, that saying I love to quote, which is, stop asking how long is this going to take and start asking how far can I go. If we're going to be committed and we're going to say, look, I'm never going to war with food again. I'm not going to binge, and I'm not going to diet. I'm going to take care of my body. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to just have a good, healthy relationship with food, no matter how long that takes. Well, then we kind of have to be ready at the beginning to say, okay, what diet habits do I have to give up? And for me, planning far in advance and deciding what and how much I was going to eat was total diet mentality. Now, you have to do some planning. Let's be realistic, right? Because we're all the moms. We have to know what's for dinner. Or if I don't plan something, and something that I really like, then I don't do so well, because I end up doing whatever's quick. And even though it may be something I like or whatever, I'm usually not as satisfied, right? So what I try to do is maybe the day before, maybe that morning, whatever, I will pick something that sounds really good, and I think I'm going to want it that night, and it's good for everybody, and I'll get that going so that later on, when I am really busy, why do I have the hiccups right now? When I am really busy, I don't have to think through, and I know there's something there that I like, but I make sure it's something I like, I'll tell you, if I get there tonight and the stuff I put in the crock pot this morning doesn't sound good to me, I'm going to try to get what does sound good to me at that moment. Even if this morning it sounded great, if it doesn't sound good tonight, I'm not going to have it. If I have a choice, sometimes, like, what if you go to somebody's house, you don't really have a choice of what's there for dinner? Then we just do the best we can, right? We pick out of what's available, what sounds good to us. There's all sorts of exceptions to these rules, right? We're just doing the best that we can in every given circumstance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what's a way, Julie, that you can learn to trust yourself in the moment and still feel like you have a handle on your plans and that you're not making it up at the last minute trying to get by? Because then we know we grab whatever's there rather than what really sounds good.
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to think about that. I think for my health, that's one of the reasons why I'm wanting to focus on planning ahead so that it's not my emotions choosing, it's my brain choosing. Because I have enjoyed good health, but I know that I'm at a turning point where if I don't start making better choices as far as what I put in my mouth, I'm going to lose my health, because I'm at that age where things start going downhill. And I've been lucky to avoid prescriptions other than thyroid, because I had my thyroid removed 30 years ago. But yeah.
Well, let me tell you right now, I'm going to send you guys both a study by BYU. Let me find it. Here's an easy to read article about it. They did an in-depth study at BYU on intuitive eating back in 2005. And it shows unequivocally that the healthiest way you can eat, I'm just putting you guys both in an email right now, is the intuitive eating way. And they actually do detailed studies on which people are the healthiest. And the people who eat intuitively have the healthiest lives, healthiest diets, most balanced diets, best levels of fat levels, all that stuff. Because in the end, that is what your body will naturally do. But as long as we're continually fighting this diet world, read this article.
So how are we going to get there? Is that what we're going to learn in this group? Because I believe that. I know that to be true, but I can't stop.
Yes. And so here's the thing. Number one, remember the patience one, number 5. Okay. Number 1, you're going to be patient with yourself, because this takes time and practice. I am still practicing it, guys, right? I'm still practicing it. I'm still working on doing this and losing the rest of my weight and finding that balance too, right? So patience is number 1, but you have to be willing to trust yourself enough to say, I will not diet anymore, and I will not binge anymore. And then I'm gonna play around and learn, what does my body really want? What does it feel like to be hungry? When is hungry too hungry? When is hungry not enough hungry? And you have to, the only way to do it is to do it, and to learn from each experience. Each eating experience should be a learning experience, right?
So how do I do that with kids around? I can't eat chocolate chip cookies for every meal in front of my kids.
I remember that exact same thought when I read that. Yeah, I can't. For me, what I had to do was, and this is what worked for me, I'm not going to tell you it's the end all be all, okay? I had to realize, number 1, I do like there's healthy food that I enjoy, right? And so what I had to do was try to plan meals that were balanced, of stuff I really enjoyed. So if I hate peas, I'm not going to put peas on the plate. You know what I mean? I tried to go that direction. And then I tried to also give my kids permission to be intuitive eaters. So when they were younger, I used to force them, if I cook this, you have to have some of it.
Me too.
And so I tried to change that and say, you know what, if you're hungry, eat. When you're done, and I also tried not to have as much junk around, because eating what you want does not mean eating what calls to you, right? There's a difference between eating, in Janine's book, she calls them beckoners, and what's the other one she calls? Beckoners and hummers. The beckoners are the things that are sitting there saying, come get me, you know you want me. And then there's the hummers that just like, you think of it, like, have you ever just thought of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on really good white bread and just went, ooh, that sounds good. That's a hummer, right? And it's talking about eat the things that hum to you, not the things that are just calling to you. So if I kept less things in the house that would call to me, but give myself permission to do the hummers, So when I would try to pick meals, I'd say, okay, what really sounds good for breakfast? For me, it wasn't realistic. I'm not going to make chocolate chip cookies for all my kids for breakfast. But I could say, well, we usually just grab cereal and that doesn't really sound very good. Does oatmeal sound good? How about I could make a pancake? I could make us pancakes. That sounds good.
Chocolate chips.
Yeah. So you just kind of have to start where you are and figure out, okay, what would I really enjoy that makes sense to me right now? You know what I mean? You don't have to go out all out and eat chocolate chip cookies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because honestly, to me, I can't imagine even being good with that for 2 weeks or even a week. I would be really sick of them fast, right?
So tell me, so say that again. Eating what you want is not the same as what?
So eating what you want is not the same as eating whatever is calling to you from the cupboard. So
Okay.
think of the Beckoners and the Hummers, okay? Beckoners are food that, you know, you walk by a bakery and you see the chocolate-filled croissant and suddenly, all you can think about is a chocolate-filled croissant. That's not your body saying that's what I wanted. That's what sounds really good right now. That's a Beckoner going, ooh, don't I look good? Come and get me. That's marketing,
Okay.
right? That's marketing.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing you said was, I will not binge. I will not something else. I can't remember.
Diet. I won't
Diet.
diet and
Okay.
I won't binge. We're going to get rid of the extremes, right?
Okay.
So dieting is the whole, you can't have this, you can't have this, you must have this, you must eat it at this time. You can't eat 30 minutes before bed. You can't eat, you know, like, okay, I'm just going to trust my body. God gave me hunger and fullness cues. It's the prime thing he gave all of us. So my granddaughter, Aria, I got to feed her all week, and she is a perfect intuitive eater. Perfect intuitive eater. She doesn't say anything about being hungry until the minute she is really hungry, and then she screams at the top of her lungs. And you're like, oh, I think she's hungry, right? So you put her down in front of you, and first I mix up, like, she loves sweet potatoes, hates peaches. I don't know why. But I mix up, you know, the stuff that's in front of me. I put the little rice in it. I start feeding her. Her mouth's wide open. She's enjoying every bite. And then all of a sudden, she does pay attention to how it tastes, because if you try to sneak a mouthful of peaches in there, she does like, oh. And then the next bite, she just kind of like does this. She's not going to eat it. And then as soon as she's full, she just stops. Like, literally, I can put that spoon up to her mouth 1,000 times, and she's just like, I'm done. Right? Never any reason for more. But we train them later. We're like, oh, okay, but doesn't this sound good? And, oh, I know you don't feel good. Let's go make cookies. And we do all sorts of stuff that mess up our intuitive eating.
Yep.
But if we could go back to that point, I mean, think about it. Think about how much you typically eat and be honest in your own head. You don't have to say it out loud, so you can be honest. I remember binges. I mean, I've blogged to you before about binges. Have you read my one about the cheesecake yet?
Mm-hmm.
Is that one come out yet?
Oh, I was thinking my other friend wrote something about cheesecake.
There's a blog. I think it's coming out in the next week or two on cheesecake. Read that one. You will be shocked at how much I can eat in one time. Yeah. I've probably,
yeah, I did read that.
Did you?
Read that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've probably eaten 5,000-6,000 calories at a time. Right. So I understand what it means to binge. And there's no shock to me at how I made it up to 267 pounds. No shock at all. I know how I did that. But to think that I could somehow now stop that kind of eating and go to, okay, I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm going to stop the minute I've had enough. I'm going to eat whatever I want in that time period. Let's say it's cheesecake, right? But I'm going to eat only when I'm hungry and stop when I'm full. I'm telling you, that would cut my calorie intake into like a quarter of what it used to be. Just that, if I ate nothing but junk the whole time. So you can't tell me that that's not a significant reduction in fat, calories, sugar, gluten, all that garbage that was so awful for me. And then when you start thinking, okay, but I'm really not eating cheesecake every time I sit down and do that. So it gets healthier and healthier and healthier the more your relationship with food gets healthier and healthier and healthier. But immediately going down to when you're just hungry and when you're just full is already a bazillion times less calories than you've ever eaten in your life, right? Because we did not get overweight because we ate the wrong foods just when we were hungry and stopped when we were full, did we? We ate more than when we were hungry, way past full. We ate and grazed and did all sorts of stuff that was ignoring all the signals of our body. So just try really hard to trust yourself enough to try this with all your heart. I don't want you getting 6 months down the road and say, well, I tried it and it didn't really work for me. Right? I want you to say, no, I lived it. I did it. I ate when I was hungry. I stopped when I had enough. I gave myself permission to eat what I wanted. I paid attention to how that felt. I ate mindfully so I could tell, like, am I really enjoying this as much as I did before? Maybe yes, maybe no. Am I doing it? And then see what really happens. See what really happens. But you got to go in all in. You got to like take off the fear as much as you can, hand it over to the Lord and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't think you're going to want chocolate chip cookie dough for 2 weeks. I really don't. I do think you'll want stuff that you've been holding back from yourself for a long time. And if you do that, let yourself have it and eat it slow and enjoy every single bite and pay attention to how you feel and learn from it. Okay, maybe that was too much chocolate. You know, my third chocolate chip cookie yesterday, yeah, it still tasted great, but not as great as the first two did. And my body kind of felt like, I really didn't need that, right? So give yourself permission to do this program full out, and see where it goes. And I honestly think, well, no, here's what I know, because here's what I can testify to you. This is why I've started this program. I have learned to trust myself so much more. I still have moments where I struggle with that, but I would say 90% of the time I trust myself. And when the 10% where I find myself being afraid, I can get back. I can say, okay, no, this is stupid. I know how this works. But you can learn to trust yourself. You can take care of your body. You won't eat sugar forever. I swear on my life, you won't. Now, let me just share a couple things. I haven't really looked at the lesson I prepared for you while we were doing this, and maybe I'll just do some of it next week and we'll continue this discussion. But some of the things, like I wrote here, what sort of emotions do you tie to being hungry? I definitely tie emotions to being hungry. I don't like being hungry. And I tend to feel like I'm missing something or I'm lacking something, or it's kind of like when you hear about kids who starved in Africa as children and then they hoard food when they're older. I feel that way emotionally with hunger. It's almost like hunger is tied to emotional emptiness for me. And so I had to learn to kind of separate that and say, okay, hunger is just my body saying it wants food. It's not a bad thing. And if I feel hunger, that's an exciting thing now, because that means, oh, I get to eat something, right? I don't have to be afraid of it. One of the questions I want to ask you is, how hungry is the right level of hungry? Like there's total levels of hungry, right? So how do you know, like, is this hungry enough? Should I eat? Should I wait? What do you think on that?
I think whenever you feel any type of hunger, you should eat. But you should pay attention to when you're full, because maybe it's just a snack you need. Or, if you're feeling more hungry, then you need to eat more.
True. There is a great quote by Janine Ross. She says, being hungry is like being in love. If you're not sure, if you don't know, you're probably not. So if you find yourself going, am I hungry? Yeah, I'm probably not hungry. Or at least I'm not hungry enough. Go get a glass of water, keep doing whatever you're doing, right? Because real hunger, you're not going to mistake. You know when you're hungry and when you're not. Some of the programs, like the intuitive program, uses a 1 to 10 scale. And they consider like a 5 being neutral, you're not hungry or full. And as you go down the scale, you're getting hungrier. And as you go up the scale, you're getting fuller. And they kind of suggest that, if this is neutral, that you eat when you're at, a 4 or a 3, about a 3, and that you eat only until you're like a 7. They're trying to keep you in that really mellow range. But being the diet obsessor that I was like really obsessed with trying to figure out, well, what number is it? Well, am I hungry enough? Well, should I go a little hungrier? Or, and I just drove myself crazy. So then I didn't even follow it because it just felt like another rule. So the idea is not to give you a rule, but to help you think about taking care of your body. If your body's giving you a signal that I need more nourishment right now, then give it more nourishment right now. Don't starve it. And if your body's saying, okay, I've really had enough, don't keep stuffing food in it. Think of it, treat yourself the way you would treat a child that you really, really love, right? If Aria, my granddaughter, came to me and said, Grandma, I'm so hungry. I'd say, great, let's make lunch. What sounds good, sweetheart? Do you want a sandwich? Do you want soup? What would you like? I wouldn't say like, we're having fish tacos and that's what we're having whether you like it or not, right? I'd say, okay, what do you want? And then I'd let her eat and I'd feed her until she's had enough. And then we'd get down and we'd go play something. Now, if she comes to me 20 minutes later and says, Grandma, I'm so hungry, and I know for a fact she's not hungry, I'd say, okay, she's probably bored, tired, something else is going on. So I would try to figure out what else is going on with her. Okay, is she bored? We've been doing the same thing for a long time. Let's go for a walk. How about we go for a walk? And if you're still hungry when you get back, we'll get a snack. Here's a big glass of water. Let's go play a different game, or whatever. But I wouldn't just give her food 20 minutes later because she tells me she's hungry. I would know that something else was going on, right? So treat yourself as kindly as you would the cutest little kid you ever knew, and be good to yourself. Be nice to yourself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So
I've told you about that podcast that I was listening to. Her name's Dr. Deb, and she always tells people to be kind to themselves and call yourself sweetie and honey and talk nice to yourself. So.
Yeah. Instead, what we do is like, oh, you're such an idiot. I can't. Yeah. And then we wonder why we feel so awful inside, right? Because we're really mean to ourselves. But why not say, oh, you're hungry. Okay, well, what do you feel like eating? Well, and I think it's okay. There's something, Julie, answering some of your questions. These programs, even like intuitive eating and Janine Roth stuff, and there's a lot of programs that follow these similar guidelines. They all talk about something called gentle nutrition. Okay. And gentle nutrition means, if I love, I'm trying to think of a great example. If I love Captain Crunch and Quaker Oat Squares equally, and Quaker Oat Squares is better for me, but I like them equally, I'm going to choose healthy. I'm going to choose Quaker Oat Squares. But if I really am having a hankering for Captain Crunch, I'm going to let myself have some Captain Crunch, right? And you're generally choosing between healthy foods most of the time, but you get play foods. There's just no right or wrong. You can have some fun things when you want them. But they all stress that gentle nutrition cannot be the initial focus of your quest, because you can't get there until you've gotten past the point where you trust yourself and you allow yourself to have what you want. So gentle nutrition is like the last thing taught in all of these things. When they're taking someone who's already in a war with food, right? If you have just normal eaters and they happen to be eating too much high calorie stuff all the time, it's easy to teach them gentle nutrition. But you have somebody who's gotten in this battle with food for decades, it's really hard to change that if you don't focus first on trusting yourself and trusting your body, and then you move towards gentle nutrition. So if we think about God's way of doing things, think about the word of wisdom. The word of wisdom doesn't disallow any kind of food, none, right? You can have anything. It doesn't say you can't have this and this and this, but it does push you towards, hey, here's what's going to take care of your body, right? Whole grains, wholesome herbs, right? Fruits and vegetables, meat sparingly. It's all about gentle nutrition. He doesn't tell you how much. He doesn't tell you, when you can and when you can't. Basically, he said, here's your hunger, here's your fullness, and here's the foods that are going to keep you the healthiest, and there's nothing off limit. I would call that a pretty good definition of gentle nutrition, right?
Yep.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it is part of the program. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to eat chocolate chip cookie dough for the next 20 years and be healthy. But I am telling you that you have to treat the mental things that we've created as well as the physical. And we have to get past that way that we look at food as being good or evil, off limits, on limits, all that stuff, if we're going to become really intuitive eaters, really natural eaters. Okay, so we're almost to the end. I'm going to save some of this. I might push next week's lesson back a little bit so we can keep talking about this next week, because it is a big deal. Let me pull up the There we go. The food for thought for this week, and I'll post this the second we're done. All I want you to do is practice. It says, practice honoring your hunger and fullness. That's all you're going to do is practice that. Okay. Easy, easy. We practice it every single time we eat. And you can do this no matter what your situation, right? If you find that you're eating when you're not totally hungry or you're eating a little past full, just learn from it and write down what you learned so you don't forget by noon, right? So take a minute each day just to write down for you what worked and what didn't work. And then I put some suggestions here of things that work for me in case they're helpful for you. You may find totally different things, and I hope you'll share them with us and share them with us throughout the week on the Facebook page, because I want you guys to be able to get support throughout the week, not just on your call each week, okay? So here's some of the suggestions that are on your thing. Oh, actually, I can share a screen with you. I'll do that. Okay. All right, so you can see right here, there's our BYU study. We'll get rid of that so you don't have to see that. Okay, so ways that I help myself to honor hunger and fullness. I've learned how much my stomach can comfortably hold from experimenting, and you guys still have to experiment to figure out what that level is. For me, I know what I have to do. And so I try to take only that much on my plate. If I can take just that much on my plate, it's so much easier for me because it's harder for me to leave food on my plate than it is to never put it on. So I try really hard to take only the amount that I know is going to fit in my stomach, or even a little bit less, because it's easier to take more than it is to leave it on the plate or throw it away. Second, when I plan meals and snacks that I will really enjoy, then I look forward to those meal times, right? I'm excited about dinner if it's something I know that I'm going to like and it's already planned. But if I wait, and I'm really bad at this, if I wait and I get really busy all day and I haven't planned anything, typically I'm not that thrilled with our dinner because I just slap some together quickly and I end up not as satisfied, and it's more tempting to graze because I wasn't satisfied. I eat slowly in tiny bites. This helps me tremendously, you guys, to make sure I get the most amount of taste and satisfaction of what I'm eating. I use forks for things like brownies. I wish I had used it yesterday for the cookies. But it helps me just take littler bites and really savor it. You know, it's not some rule that you have to use a fork, right? But it just helps me slow it down. If I'm going to eat it, I make sure that I'm going to enjoy it. So that's something I do. And then when something's limited, this is funny, I wrote this before I went to my daughter's, like a batch of cookies. But I don't want them right then. I put mine in a baggie and set them aside, letting everyone know I like to save mine for later, right? I grew up in a house where chocolate chip cookies were like, you ate them fast or your brothers would eat them all. There was no leftovers ever. So as a mom, I would say, hey, I'm saving mine and putting it aside, touch it and die, right? And I wish I had done that yesterday, because instead I just ate it instead. And then at restaurants, it helps me if I share with other people, because again, it halves the portion. That's usually plenty for me. And it's just easier. If it's something that I can take home as leftovers, that's easier too, because then I don't feel so bad about bringing it home. But if it's like a salad, I'm not going to eat that later. I hate leftover salad. So if I'm not sharing with someone, I try to pick something that will be good leftovers. So it's easier for me to go, oh, okay, I can have that for dinner tonight when I'm hungry again, because I really liked it. I can look forward to that. If not, it's just easier for me to share with people. And then I keep snacks available as often as possible. So for instance, when I noticed that last time I went to my daughter's house in Chicago, suddenly I'm a guest in my daughter's house. That's a weird situation to be in for me. I'm used to my kids coming back to my house. And I felt very much like, I'm not going to go rummage through her cupboards if I'm hungry. So I found myself eating a little bit too much at meals for fear I would get hungry and not have a way to take care of that. So what I did on this trip is I stocked the bottom of my bag I carry around with like granola bars. And so I always knew that I had something I could have that tastes good. If I was hungry, I could just pull one out and have it anytime. And so that kind of gave me that sense of control of, I'm not going to have to go around hungry or starving if I don't want to. So anyway, those are just a few things that work for me. I'd love to hear what works for you this week. Let's keep this conversation going. I'm going to push the lessons back another week, and let's keep talking about this, because I have more stuff to share with you on it. But for this week, let's just experiment and see what happens.
Okay.
So how are you feeling? Are you scared now?
No, I've kind of been working on this for a while now, so.
What about you, Julie?
Yeah, I have to say that like I haven't read any of the intuitive eating. My daughter has told me about it, but I'm not as familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's interesting that study from BYU, and then there was a talk, the plagues of prosperity
Mm-hmm.
by a BYU professor recently, talking about what we choose to eat and the insulin, and that's the plague of our generation and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
he kind of outlined, what we should be eating, kind of thing. I guess I don't know. I'm like battling this in my brain a little bit because I feel like that I've just become so addicted to sugar that when I'm not eating it, I don't want it. So if I get past that place where I'm not eating it, then I'm good.
For how long?
For how long? What?
For how long are you good? What's the longest you've ever stayed away from sugar?
6 months.
Right. But 6 months comes and it goes. And
Yeah.
then you're back in trouble. So what we want, isn't what you want really to be able to have a cookie and then not think about it again?
Yeah, maybe, but
you don't believe you can get there.
yeah, and I just don't think it's serving me in any way, I guess is what I'm feeling like right now.
Okay.
Maybe I'll change my mind.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. This is the journey of discovering, it's part of that where do you want to be 20 years from now question is
right
where you want to be. For me, I so did not want to worry about if the neighbor serves me ketchup with sugar in it. I just can't mentally handle that for the next 20 years of my life.
No, I agree. I'm not going to worry about that either, but
Right.
the
But
bigger
see, if it
picture
were
of
truly
things.
an addiction, if it were truly a physical addiction, you would have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But it's not a physical addiction. It's an emotional addiction. It's
Yeah,
not.
but there's actually studies that show that it's a physical addiction too. So that's what confuses me.
Well, yeah, and we can go into that a lot. I don't really believe that. All the things that, I've read a lot of things that really counteract that and say, yeah, of course it has an effect on our body, but it's not the same as an actual addiction.
Okay.
But it does mentally play with us the same way as it does. And so, my advice to you would be trust yourself enough to invest in this program 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, I've tried all these other things. They're not working. They haven't worked so far. So can this really work for me? And give it a shot and just say, okay, I'm going all in. I'm gonna trust myself, even if it's just for 1 week. Maybe you can't even think about the next 5 months. Just say, for 1 week, I'm gonna truly, truly, truly listen to when I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat what sounds good when I'm hungry, and I'm gonna stop the minute my body's had enough. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna eat again till I'm hungry. I'm just gonna see what happens.
Okay.
And if you eat something and suddenly you can't stop thinking about it and you want to eat it, and you then call us, text us, put it on the Facebook page and say, I'm really struggling. I had a cookie for lunch and now that's all I want. And I'm really pissed off at Becky because she said that would work. Right? Whatever you got to do, let's be on the journey together. Let's try it and see what happens.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. I know it's scary. I can actually feel some fear coming through the web. But I promise you it's the most freeing, amazing thing ever. And don't worry about what the scale does this week. Just notice how you feel. Notice how you feel inside, outside, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Okay?
Hey.
All right, you guys. I will be on Facebook. I will post all of this stuff the minute I can get it done. For some reason, this recording takes forever to get converted. So it takes me a little while to get it posted, but it will be there today.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, thanks.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.